Hello, in this video we're going to have a look at angles in parallel lines. We're going to have a look at corresponding angles, alternate angles and co-interior angles. I'm going to start off though by having a look at corresponding angles. I've got my diagram. I've got a pair of parallel lines. I know that because I've got my arrowheads on telling me that these two lines are parallel with each other. And I've got a line that's crossing both of my parallel lines. It's got a very posh name. It's called a transversal, but all it means is a line that crosses both of my parallel lines. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw an F shape on my diagram. So I'm going to highlight these parts of my parallel lines and the vertical. So hopefully that looks like an F shape. So we've got the two arms and we've got the vertical. And what I'm interested in is these two angles here. So they're underneath the parallel lines. If I put my pen in place, we can see that this angle here is to the right of my transversal and underneath the first parallel line. This angle is what we say is in a corresponding position. So it's also to the right of my transversal and it's also underneath my parallel line. So these two angles are the same. We might call them X or X. They've got the same value, they're the same size angle. So corresponding angles are equal. But not only have we got one pair of corresponding angles, we've actually got four. So if I drew on the second diagram, I'm going to draw this line, and this one. I've got a back to front F. On the third one, I'm going to highlight F. This time it's upside down. And for the last one, if I highlight this bit here, it's upside down and back to front. But we get the same situation, so that the second one, I've got this angle and this angle, both to the left of my transversal, and they're both underneath the parallel lines. So this angle and this angle are equal. Same with the third diagram. If I put my pen in place, this angle here and this angle here correspond with each other. They're both to the right of my transversal and they're both above my parallel lines. So these two angles are also equal. And then the last diagram, I've got this angle here and this one round here, also equal. So they're both to the left and they're both above those parallel lines. So I've got four pairs of corresponding angles and the four pairs are equal in size. Second set of examples, set of angles that I want to have a look at is alternate angles. So I've got another pair of parallel lines. I've got my transversal in place. And this time, rather than drawing an F, I'm going to draw a Z. So on the first diagram, I'm going to draw it in like so. And on the second diagram, I'm going to draw it back to front. It looks like it's been stretched a little bit, but it's just a Z that's backwards. So on the first one, I'm going to draw these two angles. So the angles are inside my Z shape. If I put my pen in place, then what we can see is the angles are on alternating sides. So they're on opposite sides of my pen. And one of them's at the top and one of them's at the bottom. So not only have we gone from left and right of my pen, but we've gone from top line to the bottom line. So those two angles we describe as alternate, these two here. Alternate angles are also equal. So I've got this pair and I also get this pair of angles here. So I'll put my pen in place. They're on opposite sides of my pen, one with the top line, one with the bottom line, and they are alternate angles, they're equal. So I've got two pairs of alternate angles. Sometimes when you draw the diagrams, it helps to actually rotate your page around a little bit. Sometimes it makes it a little bit easier to see that that's a Z if you've rotated your page rather than having it at an angle. So do feel free to do that, move them around. Sometimes if you turn them around upside down, it's easier to see the F shape rather than an upside down F. So two pairs, alternate angles are equal. So these times, sometimes you'll hear them described as Z angles. The correct mathematical name is alternate angles. So if you're asked for the type of angle in the exam, you've got to say it's an alternate angle. Third example, I have two names. Sometimes you'll hear them described as co-interior, that's the word I'm going to use. Sometimes you hear them described as supplementary angles. These angles, we'll have a little look in a while whilst they're called supplementary. This time, rather than an F or a Z, I am going to draw a C shape. I'm going to draw two lines here, and I'm going to draw the angle here. This time I'm looking for the two angles inside my C. So I'm looking for this angle at the top and this one at the bottom. Now this time, rather than the angles being equal, I think we can see that they're not, because this one here is less than 90, so it's acute, and this one over here is bigger than 90, so it's obtuse. So these two angles can't be the same. And actually what we get is, if I call that X and I call that Y, these two angles add up to 180 degrees. So X plus Y is equal to 180 degrees. So co-interior angles or supplementary angles, so sometimes you'll hear them described as C angles, but we need to use either the words co-interior or supplementary. And the angle fact is supplementary angles sum to 180 degrees. Okay, let's have a look at some examples. Here we've got our pair of parallel lines, we've got our arrowheads telling us that they're parallel, and I've got two angles marked. I've got one here at 40 and one here at, I've called X. I'm trying to find out. Sometimes, if we're lucky, the question will say something like, state the value of X. So I need to have a think about trying to identify my shapes in the diagram. I think I've got a Z shape in here, and so I think I've got alternate angles. So I put my pen in place, opposite sides, one at the top, one at the bottom, alternate angles. So I think that my value of X is equal to 40 degrees. So if I'm lucky, that's what I need to write down. X is equal to 40. But normally with these questions, they will say, state with reasons your value of X. Well, the first part's the same. I'm going to write X is equal to 40. I've done the hard bit, I've done the maths, I've worked out what the angle is. But I need to give the reason why I think it's 40. And I'm going to have to write down the angle fact that I've used. So I've used the fact that alternate angles are equal. So I need to remember to use my mathematical word. So I need to describe it as an alternate angle and not a Z angle. And I can't just write because it's an alternate angle. I need to write the full fact. And the full fact is alternate angles are equal. So I've got to get that written down to answer my question. Okay, that's the first example. Here's the second one. This one's a bit more complicated. This time I've still got my pair of parallel lines here and here, and I've got my transversal cutting through. But my two angles, I've got one at 50 and I've got the X that I'm trying to find. This time I can't get straight to X. It's not on an F shape, it's not on a Z shape, and it's not on a C shape. So I'm going to have to work out one of either this angle, or this angle in order to be able to work out this value X. Normally when we get these questions, there's normally 2 or 3 different ways that you can solve the question. Doesn't matter which one you take, whichever one you're most comfortable with. I'm going to start off by working out this angle here. Because if I've got my two lines crossing like this, I know that the angle at the top is vertically opposite this angle here. So this angle must be the same as that because it's vertically opposite. So I might want to call that Y. Now I'm writing my reasons down. Y equals 50 because vertically opposite angles are equal. I can then work out, especially if I draw it on, that I've got a C shape. So I know that this angle plus my angle x have got to add up to 180 degrees. So 50 plus x is equal to 180. Well, if I take 50 away from both sides, x is equal to 130 degrees. So 130 plus 50 equals 180 degrees. So x is equal to 130, so I'm getting most of the way there. I need to quote my angle fact, and that is that co-interior angles sum to 180 degrees. So I've used my correct mathematical name, co-interior. I haven't used C angle. I've gone for co-interior angles, and the full fact that they sum to 180 degrees, and I've worked out my value of x. There's a couple of different ways I could have done that, and I'll show you a different one on the next example. There's at least 3 different ways that you can use to solve that problem. Okay, final example. I've got 2 parallel lines. I've got 2 transversals, so I've got the first one here and the second one here, and I know 2 angles for those. I've got 60 degrees and 110, and I'm trying to find this angle down here at x. It's a classic question that's trying to sucker you into making a mistake, so it's a little bit cruel, but once we've had a look at it, it should be a little bit obvious what they're trying to do. When we've got lines, our transversals, crossing parallel lines, we end up with angles, lots of angles that have the same value. So this one's vertically opposite, so this one would be 60, and this one's going to have an angle on a straight line, so I'll have a look at that in a minute. That's going to be 120. And that gets repeated over here and all over the place. So you get used to seeing the angles repeating themselves. So this one here is, well, it's obtuse, isn't it? So it's not going to be 60 because that's acute. So it's going to be this 110 over here, isn't it? Surely. No, it's not. So this line over here and the angles with it give me no information at all about the angles over here on the left hand side. So I don't know how this line connects up with this one, so it's giving me no information. That 110 is not useful to me at all about working out the angles over here on the left. So this is a complete red herring. I just want to ignore it. Now this looks a lot like the previous example. Last time we had a look at calculating this angle here. Well, let's have a look at calculating the one at the top. So if that's a straight line, that's 60. That one over the top must be 120 because they sit on a straight line. So 120 plus 60 is 180. Angles on a straight line equal 180. So if I call that y, let's write it over here. Y equals 120 because angles on a straight line sum to 180 degrees. So I've got my numerical answer down, and I've got my angle fact. If you're lucky in an exam, you'll get a mark for the 120 and you'll get a mark for the angle fact. Sometimes the questions are a little bit harsher and you get nothing for the 120. You only get the single mark if you've both got the number and your full angle fact written down. Okay, what have we got now? Well, this time I think we have got an upside down F. So we're going to be looking for a corresponding angle, and this angle is going to be the same as this one. So x is going to be equal to 120 degrees because it's corresponding, and corresponding angles are equal. You need to write that down. Okay, it's your turn to get some practice. First of all, there's a document that has got your definitions of your angles, so have a read through that, make some notes, and then secondly, have a go at the exercise that's been set. Good luck.